Hi, everybody, and welcome to Barefoot TV and podcast show. This is your monthly show providing you with wisdom for your journey, clarity on your path, and support to manifest your dreams. I'm your host, Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, international medium who is blessed to act as the bridge between you and your loved ones who've passed over. I'm also a twin flame who supports people to step into conscious relationships and sacred union with self, with your partner, and with the divine or spirit or universe. I also bring together my spiritual gifts with life experiences and wisdom from the indigenous Kogi people in South America to support people to look into their soul mirror and create powerful changes and transformations so that they can confidently manifest what their soul needs, wants, and desires. So, kick off your shoes, relax, and enjoy this month's episode of Barefoot TV and podcast show, where I am joined by Philip J Bradbury to discuss writing that book, Overcoming Your Blocks. Now, Philip is a writer and author of about 18 self-published fiction and non-fiction books to date, including novels, short stories, poems, songs, and personal growth and spiritual growth, as well as writing books. He runs a course based on his book, Write That Book Now, to help people start and complete their books, as well as supports others locally and internationally to write and become authors by designing and publishing or helping them design and publish their books. With a huge background in all different areas. Now, Philip's had accounting, tree pruning, singing, army and tour bus driver, a builder, reporter, columnist, magazine editor, lecturer, business and corporate trainer, business coach. Philip's absolutely passionate about helping people to release the writer inside them so that they can get their stories out into the world. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you. I've got my shoes off.
You got your shoes off, great. And like I said before, I love the hats on your wall. So
okay.
Tell me a little bit about you and how you've stepped into writing your books and becoming a writer and an author.
Okay. Well, it never happened consciously. I was an accountant for many years, and accounting and I never really got on. And I ended up at Sun's being made redundant 4 times. I finally figured that was the universe saying, move on. But I was very depressed. All sorts of things were not working in my life. And I think I realized that when you speak up to yourself and say, yes, I've got a problem, then things start to happen. When you pretend you're okay and you're not, then you just get worse. So eventually I kind of spoke up and said, look, this is just not working, Philip. And within 2 days, I think it was, I bumped into this kind of hippie guy who told me about meditation, and within 2 hours I booked into his meditation weekend. I'd never heard of meditation, I didn't know what it was, but to spend a lot of money to sit around and do nothing seemed absolutely illogical, but something inside said, do it today for a month. And while I was doing that, after a few days, just words would start appearing, sentences would appear in my brain, my head, mind, wherever, and they would nag the heck out of me. They wouldn't go away, and it annoyed me. So eventually I thought, I'll write the stupid things down, get them out of the way. And as soon as I wrote them down, the rest of the family turned up. The next sentence, and I'd find myself suddenly an hour, 2 hours later going, wow, that was amazing. So that's where it started. And I just, after I got over the annoyance of just having these stupid words floating around in my head, I realized it was just a beautiful space to be in. I just love writing. And once I started that, then the universe turned up and said, okay, here we go. And so I met a guy met David Gaughan, who had written a manuscript and was looking for a publisher. I was talking to him about the stuff that I've been writing, and he said, well, it's obviously your story. And I said to him, were you psychic or something? How do you know this? And he said, well, it's just a guess. He said, most writers start out writing their own story. So I went back and I got this pile of paper, shuffled it back into order, and read it. And it was about this George somebody, but it was actually my story. So almost sort of unconsciously, I've been writing my story, and it's always a really helpful thing for writers to do. And most people are in some way moved to write their memoir, their diary, their story in some way. And one, it's great therapy. It gets stuff out, it gets it in front of you to look at, to let go, and to become peaceful with. It also provides a lot of material, because once you start writing about an event, then another one, things that you forgot, then like, oh, that's right, I did that, that's right, I did that. And so one thing after another, you start remembering what you've done and been and seen and the people and events, and that becomes material for whatever you're going to write next, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, you know, your own story, whether it's therapy type stuff, personal development, or whatever, or business development, or novels, short stories. Your own story cannot help but be part of it. And so to write your own story to start with it seems to be a really healthy way to start. And a lot of people just can't not do it. So, and then David said to me that he was looking for a publisher for his story, and something inside told me to do it. And I said, oh, I'll do it. Had no idea what that meant. I'm one of those strange people that someone asks me to do something and I always say yes.
Yep.
And then afterwards I go, what did I say that for? But anyway, and so I've ended up traveling the world by saying yes, and it's just been amazing. And I encourage people just to say yes, and the world will open up. So this was before the internet. Well, the internet was going in a very minor way. There were emails was kind of the thing. So anyway, David's gave me, no, he must have sent me his manuscript, and I had this very long learning curve. It took me about a year to turn that into a book because I didn't know what I was doing. So I learnt by doing it, and then we ended up printing it, because in those days print on demand did not exist, so we had to print. I think we printed 1,000 of his, and then another person came along, so I did hers, did Sue McCartney's as well. And in the meantime, I started writing these short stories, and found that there was and also running men's groups and running courses, free to be me courses I called them, helping people find their passion. And so of course I started writing about men stuff and about personal development, stuff that came from these courses, and then edited some books like that, and also some fictitious stories. And then it turned out that there was a publisher in my city in Tauranga in New Zealand, and so I went up to her full of naivety and said, you need to have some men's articles in your magazine, because it was a book that was basically women readers and writers. And I said, if you have some male stuff in there, that'll expand your readership. It just seems so logical to me. Why would she not? And she said, thank you very sweetly, and kind of walked away. I thought, well, that's weird. So anyway, I'm very find it hard to say no. So I just then, every month, I either emailed, phoned, or visited her just to remind her that I'm still here and she needs to have my stuff. Anyway, after a year, I think she just got sick of me and said, okay, just send one in. Shut the hell up. So I sent her an article, and I think it was about men's stuff, forgotten now. Anyway, as it happened, that story got more letters to the editor than any other story in the 30-odd year history of that magazine. So I became a regular contributor to her magazine, and then absolutely full of myself, I thought, well, I can do it for this one. So I then sent off submissions around the world, and ended up becoming a regular contributor to magazines in New Zealand, Australia, England, South Africa, and a few other places. And that was just a lot of fun, and that was quite nice. So anyway, so then out of that became this kind of following. We didn't have that sort of followers type thing in those days, but there were lots of people that emailed me and wrote to me, so and said they loved my stories and why didn't I publish my own book. So I did David's and I did Sue's, and then I thought, why not? So I published my book. And so I had these 3 books, and then set off in my car and drove all around New Zealand, because this is what you did then. Knocked on every bookshop door and sold these books. And for someone who, I don't look at now, I mean, I'm full of myself, but I used to be the shyest boy in the world. I was terrified of people. So I don't know, I was just, the passion grabbed me and off I went and knocked on doors. At the time I had a really wonderful partner who was really supportive of that as well, so she came along, nagged me my divine nagger. We all need a divine nagger. And so that's how the book started, and that's kind of how the magazine started, simply by saying yes, stumbling along and figuring it out. And I guess that's kind of what impelled me to start this course, because since then, of course, we've got all of these. It's really easy to do a website. So it's really easy to get books published nowadays. You can, there's 100 ways of doing it. You can do ebooks, and like I've just put 5 of my books onto ebooks, onto draft to digital. It's one of many websites.
Before we go into the detail about publishing, I want to kind of pull apart some of, no, totally fine.
Yep.
What I want to do is kind of pull apart some of that experience that you've got in there, right? Because I think it's really important for people who are out there to really kind of look at your background, your experiences in life, and even things like, what are people coming to you for? And you and I've had a very similar journey in some ways, in that, my background's education and psychology, criminology, and teaching, and lecturing at universities, and admin, and management, and a little bit of e-learning, and all of that. So writing is something that comes quite naturally to me, and it surprises me when people can't. And it's it's a little bit like you. And so I love how you talk about a few things in there about you and accounting not being friends. Me and numbers are not friends. We've gotten better throughout the years, but me and words, I'm good with them. And I think it's really important for listeners or viewers to, kind of reflect on where they're at. And if you keep getting those blocks and those challenges or those hurdles, and you're pushing and it's hard and it's stop. Because the universe does keep coming until you kind of get the message, don't they? And I've been there too, right? And like you, I got the kind of frustrated. I was in, senior management education, universities, managing staff, all of that role for quite some time. And it was 3 o'clock one morning that I got the tap on the shoulder, and I just kind of knew it was coming in some ways. And I got up and I just very quickly, this resignation letter came out. And I'm like,
I'm over it.
Oh, and it just felt right.
Right.
So it's kind of similar in a lot of ways to you.
Yes.
And I went to a meditation group, and I thought, that'll help me de-stress from the corporate world, right? And and that's where my spiritual side came back in. So I really want to kind of get people who are listening and watching to think about your life experiences as
Mm-hmm.
part of the journey and part of what you can share with other people when it comes to then writing books. And I want to kind of go, you're writing your own story is great. Mine's still coming along.
Yeah.
And for me, the first book I published was around working with energy and spirit. And that came out of me going to development circles and people saying, you need to visualize how to ground and cleanse and protect your energy. And I'm like, but I find it really hard to visualize. And everything that I looked at or found online or in books or whatever was talking about seeing. And I went, hang on a minute, that's not how I work. There'll be other people out there who don't work like this either. And so my first book was about a need that I had to be able to learn to work with spirit and energy and all of that in a way that I work. So, you know, thinking about experiences, it's really important to come back to that and go, well, what's the gap here? So thank you for sharing all of that. And there's so much in there. And I love your persistence is the word that keeps popping up, because, you know, being an author or submitting magazine articles and, you know, I've done that all around the world as well, you can get rejected a bit.
Yes. I think it was at one stage I counted up 124 rejection slips that I had from publishers. After that, I thought, I'm not keeping them. So yes, it's kind of the journey of a writer. I'm sorry to say, but you know, I don't mean to be pessimistic. And some people hit it first time, but most don't. And it's the journey. It's what happens.
Absolutely.
So every rejection slip is another step. I kind of want to explore that though. So how did you build that persistence, and how did you build that, you know, not taking the rejection personally, I guess? Well, for a while I took it pretty hard. The first 2 or 3, I just thought, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? And so one thing I did was surround myself with other writing people. And that wasn't necessarily conscious, but once I'd started doing writing, publishing, people turned up, and I did go looking for writing groups, and that was great because I realized with their support that my writing wasn't necessarily bad, that it was good or great, whatever. I mean, I've had people have emailed me to say that, for example, 2 people have emailed me to say that they were about to end their life and then they read something I wrote. They didn't do it. So that just makes everything else in my life, it's worth it. So I think we need to realize that who we are and the way we write and what we write, if it comes from a deep, clear source, then it's going to go somewhere. We can choose to give up, but I mean, the idea is to get on the other side of it and become a publisher. And imagine a publisher in their office with piles of manuscripts, hundreds, some of them have 1,000 odd in their office. And they've got to read them. And you think how long it takes to read one book.
Oh, yeah.
So they've got to, here comes another 20 today. Which ones are you going to choose? So most publishers have had such broad, extensive experience, they can read the first paragraph. And they go, yep, this is going to work. Or no, it's not happening. So, and also publishers specialize. So some do gardening, some do cooking, some do horror, some do children's books, whatever. So that's an important thing to remember, that send your book to the right publisher for a start. Because you're going to get rejected if you send it off to a children's publisher and it's a personal development book. They don't, it's the most brilliant book, they won't want it. So one is do your research, find out the publishers, and that's easy to do. I can give you that. The other thing is just to realize that some days they've already got 20 books and they can only, their printing presses and their salespeople can only deal with a certain number. And sorry, yours is brilliant, but we're already full. And it's not about good, bad, or different, it's just full. And there will be somebody. To have a group of support people, and I would suggest that you just say, generally, I mean, some, if they know about writing and that industry, about writing itself, one, they can be critical because suddenly you've become someone who wasn't who they knew, or if they're supportive, they might say, oh, it's nice. You don't want to hear that it's nice. You want to know what's good about it, what needs to be improved. You want something constructive. And generally, family are a little afraid of being critical and or are very prone to criticism. And either way, it's not helpful. Yeah. So I'd suggest you find an independent group of people, and there's lots of writers groups around, do Facebook searches, whatever. In your area, there'll be a writing group. Get with a bunch of writers. They're a crazy bunch of people, but they will support you and tell you constructively what needs to be changed, or constructively what's good about it, and constructively where you can take it. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah. And yeah. I love how you talk about, you know, finding that support group as well. So there's a couple of things in there, and I think it's really important that when we write a book, that whatever it might be, that we're really clear on what our intention is with it. It might just be to get your story out there, or it might be to educate, to teach, to inspire, to help, to you know, uplift, whatever that might be. And when you're really clear about that and who your audience might be for it, that helps you to be able to find that publisher that might align or fit with the direction that you want your book to go in, because you really have to, you know, have someone on board that gets your message, right? Whatever that might be. Exactly. And so that's kind of the first thing, and I love how you're bringing that part in, and that support group. You know, I always talk to, you know, and you and I both do this with clients in different ways, through coaching. I've helped a couple of people write their book and get that out there, and I know you've done the same thing. It's find your support group, whether it's a coach that can help you through that writing process, or I love my mum to bits, and she's really good with editing and proofreading, and she can be quite critical. And I used to, you know, get really kind of upset about it, but I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm going to work this for my own purpose, my own use. And so if I want her to pull apart something and tell me what's wrong with it, I'll go there. And so I think it's really important with that support group that you know who your people are and for what purpose.
Exactly. And also when I talk about publishers, I guess that's becoming less important nowadays too, because the standard publishers, Penguin or whoever, tend to do very, very, very little marketing. So you may as well do your own thing. That's what some people say. I mean, I'd love to have someone publish it and just do all the marketing for me, because I'm better at producing things and selling things. So yeah, decide what you're going to write it for. So some people just write their book for their own therapy, for their own cathartic experience, or get whatever it is in there out. Some people want to write it just as a story, their memoir for family, grandchildren, whatever. And so those two things are definitely not going to go to publishers at all. If you want it to go to the big wide world, then you've got a choice of the big publishers and or self-publishing. And more people are going to self-publishing. So that's yeah, so that's deciding on the avenue. And in the course that
I think that's really important as well, because, you know, you and I have both navigated that journey and jumped in, and I self-published in the end, because what I discovered was around how the back end of the publishing works and all of that side of it. And I went, you know what, I want to own my work. I want to have control over that, and I want to make sure that the integrity of what I'm putting out there is maintained. And a lot of people go that self-publishing route for that reason. But what I would say to people, and I'm sure you'd say the same, talk a little bit about, you know, navigating that journey. Can you share a little bit of, you know, a tip on navigating self-publishing?
Okay, so yeah, so the self-publishing nowadays, there's a whole gamut within that. I mean, I came across our local writing group 2 weeks ago, a woman who'd written a 30,000 word book. That's a small book, and a local publisher had charged her $30,000 to do it, and now that's extortion. To me, it's almost criminal. So first of all, do your research, and don't just go internet research. Go and talk to people. I mean, that book could have been published for about $3,000. I'm suggesting something in that area, because she had an editor, so that was done. So there's a whole range of honest to dishonest people out there. There's a whole range of experience or not experience out there. So do your research, and don't just talk to the people that are selling their services. Go and talk to the people who've been involved with them, other writers and whatever. And you will eventually get a distilled picture of who to go to and who not to. I think nowadays I can kind of smell them before they walk in the door. It's just like, okay, this one's no good. Oh, this sounds good. And I think there's so much almost desperation. It's just this real, you know, if you've got your own book, you want someone to publish it, and someone says yes, you just go for it. And people tend not to do their research because of their huge desire just to have it done. So that's one part of it.
And I know that for me, before I self-published my first book, I'd been offered a publishing deal with, in the spiritual realms, the biggest name publisher there is. And when I really kind of, and I'm not going to name names.
No.
So, you know, and when I really drilled down, and my background being education, and I wrote policies and procedures and, you know, copyright laws and, you know, all of that stuff. So I knew how to read legislation, particularly with criminology as well. And when I really dug into the agreement, I'm like, hang on a minute. What's kind of, you know, and I think that it's really important that just because something seems really nice and bright and shiny, and you know, it can be, and it might be, but, you know, it may not be the way that you need to go forward. So trust that intuition and that instinct about coming back to what's right for your book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. And I suppose one thing I did miss out, I guess, just taking a step back, once I got over accounting, I sort of slipped sideways in the training. So I found I actually quite enjoyed teaching accounting, but not doing it. And then that sort of flowed into other things, and I ended up being corporate training in other countries around the world. And I think if you can find a mentor, not just someone who's going to put your words into a kind of a template and then send it off, because your book, your writing is going to be different from everyone else's. So you'll have your own style, you have your own, in writing we call it a voice. It's the way you speak. And that has to be reflected in the book that's produced. So when you're talking to people who are perhaps going to publish your book, if they tend to be really negative about your book in any way, they're probably not the right person. If they are the kind of person that says, look, this is really good, but what you could do is do this, if they're constructively critical, let's say, then they're a possible. But if someone just says, no, you can't write like that, you don't, then just walk away. There's plenty of others out there. So kind of, I mean, Leanne, you know about this stuff. Use your intuition, listen to your gut. If you go in there and someone starts, putting your book down, if the feeling in your stomach just goes, yuck, then thank them and walk away. If the feeling is, oh, this kind of hurts, but I feel like I can get something better through this person, then hang in there. So just kind of listen and inside to you, not only to them, listen inside, because there's going to be editors for you and there's going to be editors that are not for you. There's going to be publishers for you and publishers not for you. There's going to be graphic designers, whatever. And there will be a group of people that will fit with who you are. You don't need to twist yourself into who they are. We're not at school now where you have to fill out a prescription.
And I really love that because, and I think you and I both with the teaching, the educating, the lecturing background, like, we've both spent years probably reading through assignments and things that students have submitted. So great training. Thank you, Spirit. And being able to give constructive feedback or ask appropriate questions about, I'm really unclear what this means, and there's ways in which you can do that as someone who's coaching or guiding or supporting another author to get their book out there. And I'm just remembering a lady that I worked with quite a few years back who was doing kind of a romance, spiritual, fantasy kind of novel, and it was and I was like, okay, it's not my normal style of book, but we worked together through coaching, and and she wanted that spiritual aspect added as a layer, so wanted to know how that whether she was getting it accurate or not. So and I just remember going, I'm confused. This one's doing this and this one's doing that. How does that work? And that wouldn't really work in and she went, okay, now I see. So we were able to talk it through.
Exactly,
so I really love that you mentioned that, because I think that's really important, to be open to someone asking you those questions as well.
Yes, I had recently had a guy came to me. He'd written this really amazing. He's only 23, and he'd written this really beautiful book, but he'd written it as two books, two stories together. And the last chapter, so he'd written one story, and then he'd written the second story, and then they kind of came together at the end. And it was. So I suggested to him that he simply, I mean, it kind of sounds obvious when you say it. Instead of doing one and then the other, just mingle them. Chapter 1 was about X, chapter 2 was about Y, chapter 3 was about X, and so on. So you're going backwards and forwards, and then you can see, and it was just a really simple thing, and you're going, oh, never thought of that. He thought it had to be kind of black and white, one or the other. And no, you can mingle past and future and all of that. So that was a really simple idea that he felt was good. So there's all sorts of ways of doing it. And I do despair a bit too when a lot of people who come out with these rules, the current trend is the Oxford comma, which didn't come from Oxford, it came from Stanford University. It's an American thing. And so there's all this thing about you must use the Oxford comma. Well, if someone doesn't use the Oxford comma, the reader does not give a damn. Get over it. So if you've got people who are getting picky about your punctuation, especially at the start, I mean, Cormac McCarthy, he got many awards for The Road. That's got no, I don't think he's even got capital letters in there. He doesn't have, all that sort of punctuation stuff. And it was really quite difficult to read. But thankfully, there were only 2 characters, but it was quite difficult to know who was speaking. But it works. You know, I found it boring, but millions of people have bought the book, and he's got awards around the world. So he broke all the rules, and it still works. So if someone starts getting all hooked up on the rules, get over it, move on. If that's your style, you like whatever. If you like lots of dots, starting with but and and, then go for it. If that works for you, just yeah. Sorry, I'm getting details here.
No, totally fine, because I'm having a little giggle because, you know, there's a few people, and like I said, my mum's been really good at editing a lot of mine, which is great because, you know, and she often says, Leanne, commas.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah. And it's funny when you're kind of channeling or bringing that through your intuition, like you said, the words and the sentences dropping in your head. It's like that's the least of what's coming out of me. That's why I've got you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so I love that you mentioned that. You and I could talk about this all day. So what I want to kind of maybe bring in a little bit is what's the one challenge you feel most authors or writers have? What's their challenge or their block, the one biggest one that you find?
I think it's one that I had, that I'm not good enough. Who's going to want to listen to me? Why am I, you know, it's that sort of self-deprecating thing that we put ourselves down, and it's endemic, I think, in most people on this planet. There's very few people that can just stand evenly and just be who they are, because we are so conscious of what other people think. And I think the other kind of goes with it is that being a writer means you sit on your own in your little cave, uninterrupted for years on end, maybe. And so you need to be an introvert. And then you've got to be an extrovert. You've got to get your stuff out there, and you've got to go and communicate. So you've got to be 2 opposite people. So it's a very difficult thing for writers, and some of them don't like their photo being on the book and all that sort of stuff. And what would people say? And of course, if you start with that, people are going to criticize it. You know, you set up the criticism by your negative self. So again, go with a writing group. And one of the challenges with a writing group, which you need to get through, is that most of them, they will give you weekly, fortnightly challenges. You need to write, say, 500 words, bring it along, and you read it to everybody. And especially for a new writer, that is a terrifying experience. Most of them would rather die, I think. I don't know. Something serious anyway. I'd rather eat cold porridge. And so, but it's a good exercise to read your stuff to others who will constructively help you, you know, in positively or negatively. And once you do that, after a while, you start caring less, in a sense. You start caring less about yourself, and you can be with the words. So that's probably the biggest thing.
I love that, because you're so right. It's a confidence and a worthiness and a you know, thing, and that's really at the end of the day what it comes down to. And you just reminded me of another client that I'm working with that's stepping into, you know, her spiritual side of things and wants to be more professional with it. And one of her challenges is her writing. She's not comfortable with her writing or the style, or and so I've been challenging her to write some blogs.
Right.
And and blogs are great because they give you some good ways of putting your writing out there and getting feedback on how you're going and whether it supports people. So I'd give her a topic and go write me a blog on this.
Yep.
And so she'd send it back, and then, there was some feedback given, and it was like a little bit, she got herself all worked up about, oh my God, it's not going to be good enough, and I can't write. And it was just that mental block of, I'm not good at this.
Yep.
Well, some people it comes really natural to, and other people just need a little bit of coaching, a little bit of training, a little bit of guidance in how to pull some things back. She was writing it like she'd speak it in, but not talking to the person that's reading it. And she's like, okay. So, and now she's given me 2 more the last week, and I've gone, they're fine, they're great.
Yes. Well, that's the thing I say, that writing is not homeopathy, where more is less or less is more. Writing is sport. The more you run, the fitter you get and the faster you go. And so I suggest to people just to write every day. Oh, where can I find the time? I'm too busy. Which is usually, it's not the real excuse, but it's a reason. So one of my novels, The Last Stand Down, was written over a year, an hour every morning at breakfast. I had a very forgiving wife. So I found time at breakfast to write that. It took an hour a day. So there's always, you do need to find something to sacrifice, and it might be whatever it is, some TV program. I don't watch TV, but so there is always something in your life that really doesn't matter as much as the writing, if you really want to be a writer. And you do have to organize your life, whether you've got kids and partners and all that sort of stuff, and jobs, and sometimes that's negotiation with them. But if you're committed to it, if you really want to do it, I say you just do it. And Stephen King kind of agrees with me. He usually does. So there's 2 things he says is, the best way to be a good writer is to be a good reader. Read lots of books, and obviously find time for that, and also just write and write and write. And you will find yourself, I know there's a particular client of mine at the moment who doesn't really know who he is or what he wants to write about. He's tried all sorts of horror stories, and he's tried comedy, and he's tried all sorts of things in it. Nothing quite fits. But I've suggested to him, just keep writing, Stuart. Just keep doing it. Do it, do it, do it. And somehow out of the doing of this mess, there is a little seed that's growing. And he's suddenly realized that he's got this wonderful gift of satire. He's English, so he's got a lovely voice, if you like, the way that he writes. And he's going, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I thought I should. Yeah, I thought I should.
Yeah, that's it, isn't
The
it?
should got in the way. And I call that autism. It's doing what we think we ought to do. So sometimes, as you say, some people are just natural writers, and off they go, and it just pours out. Other people, a little bit like me, you just got to keep writing and writing. And I look back at my stuff 20 years ago. Thankfully, it's been unpublished. And yeah, you just keep going.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll just quickly say, and it's sort of slightly off topic, when I started writing for Rainbow News magazine, it was sort of New Age magazine, I was doing kind of nice stuff in a sense, and it was getting a lot of feedback. And for some reason, I don't know why, I started kind of getting a little bit prodding at the readers. And the weird thing was, it's almost like the more, not quite satirical, but just pointing out some of the silly things that people do in the New Age sphere, the more kind of cheeky I got, the more people liked it. It's almost like they enjoyed being picked up on what things that they're doing. So all I'm saying is, don't be afraid. If there's something you think you're really like strongly passionate about, and there's something that needs to be said, then say it. Don't be nice. Don't be like, try and moderate yourself to whoever might be reading it, because you don't know. We don't know who's going to read it. This stuff goes to millions of people. And there'll be somebody who just goes, wow, that's amazing, if it's from your heart.
Yeah. So Yeah, and I love that. So thank you for sharing. I know that you've got a course coming up as
Yep.
well. Can you share with everybody where they can find out information about that and or connect with you?
Okay. So the course is called Write That Book Now. So that's the book. Is that backwards? So there's a website called writethatbooknow.com. There's also a Facebook page called Write That Book Now. So I'm putting stuff up on both of those. So the book's available as a kind of a takeaway course, take home. And so the course it started as a one-day course, but it's grown into a continuous one now through popular demand, as they say, while stocks last. McDonald's. Sorry, where are we? So
I just
it's
heard
now
that in all good bookstores, and I'm like, are they bad bookstores?
So the book's available, on the website, and it's available through the libraries in Australia anyway, now as an ebook. So the course is basically helping people. So we're going through a different aspect of writing each time. To do an online course, which probably is going to start in end of January, February. But I guess being a teacher from way back, I do love the dynamics of the face-to-face. And we've through this group of people, we've just done 2 classes so far. The third one is going to be on the 19th of December in Brisbane. So this amazing group of people have met each other, and we share each other's writing. We put it all up on Google Docs so they can see so I give them an exercise each month. That goes on Google Docs, and then they get to read each other's. And that's kind of scary because you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
But also you get to look at other people's styles and other people's ideas. You go, well, I never thought of that. Well, that's a brilliant idea. You're learning from each other. And then on the face-to-face level, it's a lovely social group of people who have connected with each other and shared emails and shared life together now. So we go through a different aspect of it, whether it's about characters or storyline or first paragraphs or publishing aspects, or who are you, how do you, and I suppose I can't help but bring in the personal development, spiritual development, because you're writing something that comes from your soul, from your heart, from the core. And if you're going to write something that doesn't come from there, for whatever reason, it kind of won't be as powerful.
Exactly. And people feel it, don't they?
Yeah, they know that you're talking kind of from some surface thing. Yeah, you've written it because someone's told you should. Yeah. So the course is sort of important that the people kind of get to know who they are themselves. And we do all sorts of exercises, writing exercises and personal type of exercises, get to know each other, get to know ourselves, and we share it, and it's just an amazing growing thing. So so we've got people who are writing their memoirs. One person is writing a movie.
Nice.
Another person is doing a kind of a spiritual one of your books type thing. Sort of. And someone's writing a novel kind of based on their life as a nurse. So it's another guy's he's an engineer, but he's decided he wants to be a poet, so he's starting his business as a poet. So his poetry is getting better each week, shall we say. So it's for any person that wants to write, really. And it's just I just love doing it, and everyone else seems to love it too. So
that's how you know when you're on your right path.
Oh, it just has a huge energy at the end of it.
Work, does it?
Yeah, no, I get filled up. I don't get depleted. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Like I said, we could go And
Yeah.
no doubt we'll do some more work together as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
in the future,
Okay.
hopefully. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing. And for those of you who are interested in becoming an author or improving your writing or whatever, then jump on Philip's website and grab his book, or come along if you're in Brisbane to the Write That Book course, which I'm going to head along to just because I love learning, and I want to support you as well. And I've got a couple of my clients who are going to come along as well.
I do. Sorry, I do intend to travel around a bit too, running the courses in other places. So that's going to be happening next year. So
great.
Become this wanderer.
Yeah, I love that. And for those of you who are interested in any coaching or following me as well, I also do the Barefoot Academy, is the other arm of my business, which has self-publishing as well and coaching. So jump online, thebarefootmedium.com.au or barefootacademy.com.au, and see how we can support you in that. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And if you have enjoyed what you've heard and we've given you some little light bulb moments or tips and wisdom, then hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and share it all with your friends as well. And I look forward to connecting with you all on the next month's episode of Barefoot TV and radio. And, you know, get writing, share your knowledge, share your wisdom, just let those words squeeze on out of you, and share whatever comes out. So thank you once again, and I look forward to connecting with you all in the next episode.
Thank you. It's been enjoyable.